In the middle of the vast universe, inside the cargo hold made of cold metal, he had no choice but to admit it. That he had become the hostile alien life form in this sci-fi survival game. Space survival. You have to choose one of the various races that exist in this vast space. It's like a RPG survival game where you choose and evolve one of the many races in the vast space. Sometimes he's a metallic gremlin tearing apart human spaceships, other times he's a mutant monster slaughtering enemies in ground combat, or he become a hive mind leader conquering planets. He played all the nightmarish cosmic creatures, but he only had a real attachment to one race. The unidentified aggressive space morph, or UASM for short. He calls it the Amorph. Based on the creature from the movie Alien X, a race that endlessly strengthens itself using the genetic information of its victims. At first glance, it looks overpowered, but due to the insanely difficult early survival difficulty and the inability to communicate or cooperate with other races, it was the worst fringe race in the game. The reason it became his favorite was simple. According to your choices and will. This point captivated him. Introducing our protagonist, who found himself facing an unexpected system window. He embodied an enigmatic, aggressive space morph known as UASM, currently designated as a hatchling. His sole mission was survival, and he boasted hypersensory abilities as a consequence of selecting the UASM. He casually scratched his head, initially envisioning a resemblance to the alien figure he admired from Alien X, but he decided not to dwell on it for now. Out of nowhere, a sudden and intense itch compelled him to recline. To his surprise, he began shedding his skin, completely unprepared for the excruciating itchiness that ensued. However, his immediate concern shifted to hunger. He felt an insatiable emptiness that needed to be filled. So, he aimlessly roamed the spaceship. While surveying the supplies, he deduced from their appearance that the ship likely belonged to a powerful megacorporation or a formidable star union. Understanding that getting caught at this juncture would undoubtedly result in his immediate demise, he chose to harness his hypersenses. Scanning the supplies, he eventually spotted his sought-after treasure. With a graceful leap, he reached a vault protected by a passcode. After experimenting with various codes, including the straightforward 1234, he succeeded in unlocking it. Inside, a treasure trove of chocolate bars awaited him, and he indulged in them eagerly. After savoring a few chocolates, he pondered, eating these is akin to chewing on rubber erasers, but at least they provide some nourishment. As a cockroach scuttled past him, he swiftly captured it with his tail. While consuming it, he found it surprisingly succulent. Suddenly, a system notification materialized, signaling that the predation effect had been activated. He had effectively acquired a wing gene fragment from the cockroach, stripping it of its wings trait. The system then presented him with the option to apply the wings. He couldn't help but be astounded by his stroke of luck, obtaining a gene fragment with such swiftness. Gene fragments serve as the foundation of my amorphous abilities. The more genetic data I accumulate, the greater my potential for evolving into a more formidable organism. Wings, huh? Not a bad addition, he mused. With a press of the system window, he activated the trait, and a wing promptly sprouted from his back. It felt promising, but the challenge was figuring out how to move it. They're on my back, so I suppose I can imagine moving the trapezius muscles? He concentrated, and it clicked. He began to soar, utilizing the newfound wing trait gifted by the cockroach. As he indulged in more chocolate, he couldn't help but reflect, energy consumption is more significant than I anticipated. To harness these wings properly, there's a skill I absolutely must acquire. My first goal is set. He caught more cockroaches, but even after the 20th one, he saw no apparent change. The taste had shifted, now resembling a burnt pancake. Glancing at his status in the system window, he noticed a new trait, chitinous exoskeleton. Pondering its utility, he thought, a chitinous exoskeleton. Defense increases with growth level. It's a valuable trait, but its usefulness is limited at the moment. I need to secure a robust vitality trait, but it's not showing up. Robust vitality reduces energy consumption and slows aging, a common passive trait in insects and plants. With it, I won't be as fixated on food. In conclusion, I must catch a substantial number of roaches if I want to survive. Carefully searching for another cockroach, he decided to change his location. Leaping from the container, he took flight and spotted 2 more roaches. Capturing one, he devoured it, but the other roach attempted to flee. He pursued it, but an unintended collision with the wall allowed the cockroach to slip between the containers. Determined, he employed his tail to seize the escaping insect and placed it in his mouth. Suddenly, a system window emerged, indicating a predation effect had triggered. Robust vitality gene fragment acquired successfully. The system inquired whether he wished to strip the robust vitality trait from the cockroach. Without hesitation, he agreed. His skin and muscles improved noticeably. After acquiring the new trait, he contemplated, "The owner of this ship, humanity, is my adversary." Sensations of vibrations emanating from beyond the wall and faint footsteps echoing in my ears serve as a stark reminder that time is not on my side. To elude the impending grim future hurtling toward me, I must expedite my evolution beyond the limitations of being a mere hatchling. To achieve this, I must expand my domain beyond the confines of this cargo hold. He mused, "This is where it all commences. It's high time I shattered the constraints of this cargo hold I initially set foot in." After exiting the cargo hold, our protagonist found himself contemplating his next move. His destination had already been decided. He was headed toward the cooling room adjacent to the reactor. This facility held paramount importance, which meant that few visitors ever ventured there. It was a place shrouded in secrecy, out of sight and, as the saying goes, out of mind. Yet, he harbored a contingency plan. If things went south, he could sabotage both the reactor and the cooling room and make his escape. With a skilled hand, he deftly removed the screws securing the vent cover and slipped inside. The confines of the vent greeted him with the hum of a spinning fan. As he gazed at the ventilation fan, he realized that damaging it would surely trigger an alert to the human operators. Thus, he had no choice but to time his passage through it with utmost precision. It was a moment when his amorph abilities would prove invaluable. Activating his hypersenses, he became acutely aware of the iron oxides and fine metal dust swirling in the air. The well-worn joints of the rotating fan blades exhibited a noticeable slowdown at a specific point in their rotation. His highly analytical brain swiftly processed this data and urged him to take action. It was time to make the leap. With a swift and agile movement, he propelled himself through the narrowing gap in the fan, relying on his wings to guide him safely past. His tail grazed perilously close to the spinning blades, sending shivers down his spine. As he cleared the fan, he let out a sigh of relief, knowing that he had narrowly escaped a potentially fatal encounter. Continuing his journey through the labyrinthine vents, he encountered an unexpected sight: a spider scuttling along his path. Finally reaching the end of the vent, he overheard a conversation between 2 researchers. One inquired about the results of test subject 26, to which the other replied with disappointment, marking it as yet another failure. They lamented the impending scolding they would receive from their team leader. Listening to their exchange, our protagonist began to piece together the puzzle. This was no ordinary research vessel. Its design and operation hinted at the involvement of the notorious Megacorp. In the vastness of the solar system, Megacorp reigned as a powerful human faction. In this universe, where governments had ceded their authority to massive corporations, Megacorp stood as an epitome of extreme materialism. Though most human races in the game remained neutral, Megacorp leaned decidedly towards an evil alignment. Rumors abounded that Megacorp engaged in the abhorrent practice of modifying healthy individuals into slaves, a fate that must be even grimmer in the unforgiving reality beyond the game's boundaries. Emerging from the vents, our protagonist took to the air, seeking a safe place to hide while he scouted the unfamiliar surroundings. His next course of action depended on the nature of this research vessel. He knew that his path would need to adapt accordingly. As he employed his hypersenses to gather information, thoughts raced through his mind. If this ship specialized in creating mutant supersoldiers for ground combat, he could potentially enhance his own abilities and acquire a robust physique. Conversely, if it delved into experiments related to cult psychic powers and the enigmatic space elf race, he might gain formidable psychic abilities. His personal preference leaned towards the latter, but he realized that obtaining psychic powers early on was a lofty aspiration. His thoughts were abruptly interrupted by a plea for help. Turning his attention to the source of the cry, he discovered a transparent tube filled with water, and within it floated an amoeba. Its distinctive trait was oxygen storage, a seemingly useless attribute for a shape-shifting amorph like himself. Deciding not to consume the amoeba, he instead employed his hypersenses to search for clues about the situation. An eerie sense of electricity in the air hinted at the presence of the two researchers mentioned earlier. After a thorough scan, he located a button that, according to his hypersenses, would terminate the experiment. Pressing the button, he watched as the amoeba inside the tube expressed gratitude before he discreetly made his exit, soaring away to conceal himself. Moments later, a newcomer entered the facility, a young woman accompanied by a feline companion. She inquired about the progress of test subject 26. The researcher cautiously responded, "There are definitely reactions occurring. If you could just give it a little more time." The woman's tone grew stern as she retorted, "Time is credits. We need results to report to the company before we reach our destination. If we don't produce results, the company may reconsider your employment." As they conversed, the researcher accidentally stumbled upon a test subject with a skull-like appearance, causing the woman to exclaim, "Please, anything but that." The man's shock was palpable. The girl's insistence on the importance of drawing out the elusive aptitude from test subject 26 revealed her vested interest in the senior researcher's success. She emphasized that such a breakthrough would guarantee the senior researcher a promotion to at least the position of head researcher. Moreover, if all went well, it could lead to valuable connections on Mars' side, where there was significant interest in their project. As the discussion turned to the possibility of administering selonium, an awakening drug developed by the Star Union, the girl, still affectionately petting her cat, explained that they had not yet experimented with this specific drug. They had, however, already tested several other compounds with similar properties, leaving selonium as their final option. With a commanding tone, the girl ordered the immediate administration of selonium. The researcher expressed his concerns about the potential life-threatening risks without the presence of a neutralizer. Unbeknownst to them, our protagonist remained hidden behind them, silently observing their unsettling conversation. Despite the researcher's reservations, he began administering selonium to the amoeba in minuscule doses, ranging from 0.0 mg to 0.7 mg. The girl, undeterred by the cautious approach, urged the researcher to increase the dosage upon witnessing a reaction. She insisted on administering the full amount, even if it seemed excessive. The amoeba's cries for help intensified as it experienced excruciating pain. The girl maintained a sinister smile, hoping for a positive outcome. Our hidden protagonist watched in horror, unable to intervene, as the situation escalated. After the amoeba burst like a popped balloon, the girl departed with a cryptic statement, instructing the researcher to report any meaningful results to her. She briefly glanced in the direction where our protagonist had concealed himself, but found nothing. Still hidden, our protagonist couldn't shake the unpleasant feeling left by the amoeba's plea for help. He seethed with a growing anger, convinced that the girl with the cat had something nefarious in store. As he watched her depart, he couldn't help but harbor dark thoughts, "You'll be dead in a few days." The mystery of the research vessel deepened, and our protagonist's resolve to uncover the truth intensified. Inside the spaceship, there was a bridge that connected various facilities, and beneath this bridge, the amorph had strategically spread its saliva. This peculiar act had an unusual purpose. It allowed the amorph to feel as though the ship itself had become an extension of its body. Information was the most crucial asset in the ongoing war, particularly the knowledge of the enemy's whereabouts, activities, movements, and interactions. All of this vital information was relayed to the amorph through the liquid that now permeated the ship's passages. On the fourth day of his existence as an amorph, his nest was finally complete. Having finished constructing his nest, the amorph had been shuttling between it and the cargo hold for the past few days. During these excursions, he caught roaches and spiders for sustenance and kept a watchful eye on his target, gathering valuable intelligence during the gaps in his daily routine. Currently, the amorph lurked within the vents, observing a young woman named Kisaragi Yujin. She was consistently leaving at the same time, and she held a pivotal role as the research team leader aboard the ship. Despite her frail appearance, she was the most influential person on board and a significant threat to the amorphous survival. 2 days ago, an incident had occurred where a test subject had managed to escape. Amidst the chaos and commotion among the other researchers, Eugene had astonishingly created a tracking device within 2 hours and successfully recaptured the escaped subject. If that subject had used the ventilation ducts, the Amorph would have been in grave danger as well. This incident had heightened the Amorph's sense of urgency to eliminate Eugene as soon as possible. The girl suddenly looked toward the vents, sensing an unusual presence. Her colleague inquired if something was amiss, to which she replied dismissively, attributing it to nothing more than her imagination, urging them to hurry along. Retreating slightly to avoid detection, the Amorph contemplated Eugene's unusual perceptiveness. He couldn't help but wonder if she possessed psychic abilities. Psychic powers were an inherent trait of the cult race, encompassing abilities such as ESP, telepathy, and mind control. While such powers were akin to superpowers, rare individuals among humans were occasionally born with psychic potential. Back in his nest, indulging in chocolates, the Amorph pondered how to deal with Eugene. She was constantly guarded by armed soldiers in a state of high alert, making it challenging to approach her directly. His status window revealed a new trait: paralyzing venom. It was a perfect asset for someone with his weak physical form, as a single drop could easily immobilize an adult human for 5 minutes. However, using this venom required a one-on-one situation, which was difficult to achieve with the ever-watchful soldiers around. With these thoughts swirling in his mind, the Amorph realized that merely contemplating the situation wouldn't yield answers. It was time for him to take a break from his nest and perhaps seek a solution elsewhere. With a chocolate in hand, the Amorph made its way to the facility where the amoeba was imprisoned. As it approached, the Amorph greeted the amoeba, remarking that it looked better than the previous day and that it had brought food once again. The amoeba expressed its happiness, and the Amorph carefully placed the food inside the tube, allowing it to flow into the amoeba's containment. The amoeba happily mentioned that the food was tasty. As the Amorph considered the situation, it wondered whether this particular bubble amoeba had unique abilities or if there had been a change in its race. Then, it recalled something important: the girl, Kisaragi Eugene, had a cat. This cat seemed to have a strong attachment to her, and the Amorph realized that if the cat were to die, it might expose a significant vulnerability in Eugene. Additionally, the Amorph noted that the cat often remained alone in the room, except when her owner called her. This presented an opportunity to use the cat as bait to lure Eugene into a vulnerable position. The scene shifted to the cat, named Caesar, who was in the room. Caesar wiggled his tail and yawned, seemingly in a contented state. The Amorph, observing from the vents, thought about the cat and Eugene. It marveled at Caesar's regal appearance and noted that he had likely grown plump from eating premium meat every day. This observation led the Amorph to conclude that Eugene was no ordinary person. Killing the cat outright wouldn't be difficult since she was within view, but the Amorph couldn't act in the current situation. The ventilation duct entrance appeared normal on the outside, but the Amorphous hypersenses revealed that it was densely lined with laser sensors. Even a light touch would trigger an immediate alarm. Frustration welled up within the Amorph, and it couldn't help but beat its tail in irritation. The small noise caught Caesar's attention, and he approached the vents, curiously looking at the source of the sound. The cat began to scratch at the vent cover, and soldiers quickly arrived on the scene, remarking that the cat was again causing trouble. As the Amorph managed to escape unnoticed, it realized that using its tail to attract attention had been a grave mistake. It berated itself for the error, but suddenly had an idea. The cat, which had seemed bored, could be used as a tool for stimulation, creating sounds to provoke the soldiers' reactions. With a sinister smile, the Amorph contemplated its newfound strategy for dealing with the situation. As the cat slept peacefully, it suddenly heard a sound emanating from the vents nearby. Intrigued by the noise, it approached and discovered a cockroach. The cat's fascination with the insect was immediate, and it began to paw at the vent cover, creating a cacophonous racket in its excitement. To everyone's surprise, the cat's actions were remarkably effective, and it managed to break open the vent cover. The alarmed soldiers were once again perplexed by the cat's antics, but decided to postpone investigating the situation. After all, where could the cat possibly go with them diligently guarding the room? Unbeknownst to the soldiers, the cat had ventured into the vents, chasing the elusive cockroach deeper into the passageways. Eventually, the cat reached the end of the vents, and the cat opened the cover, and in a swift and cunning move, the Amorph jumped onto the cat. Using its tail, the amorph pierced the cat, incapacitating it. As the cat emerged from the vents, the amorph wasted no time and bit into its head, swiftly consuming the unfortunate feline. The amorph declared that it was delicious. The sinister plan to bait the cat had taken a dark and unexpected turn, and the amorph had found sustenance in an unlikely manner. As tensions ran high on the spaceship, the team leader, Kisaragi Yujin, was growing increasingly frustrated about not seeing her beloved cat, Caesar. She approached the captain, demanding answers, and inquired about when she could be reunited with her feline companion. The captain tried to reassure her, explaining that the soldiers were currently conducting a search, but Yujin's impatience was palpable. She angrily slammed her hand on the desk, insisting that it had already been 2 hours, and Caesar was accustomed to strict meal times. She expressed concern that something must have happened to him. The captain tried to reason with her, reminding her that they were on a spaceship and unless the cat had somehow hijacked an escape ship, he must be somewhere on board. However, Yujin's anger continued to escalate, and she demanded that they find him immediately. The captain, frustrated by the situation, thought to himself that if Yujin weren't from the noble capital, he would have locked her up in solitary confinement by now. Yujin inquired about the guards, wondering why they hadn't found her cat yet. The captain informed her that the guards had all been detained, and due process would be followed once they reached their destination. However, Yujin took matters into her own hands and ordered the captain to execute the guards immediately. The captain hesitated, expressing his concerns that such actions would upset the soldiers. This led to a tense exchange between the two, with Yujin questioning the captain's authority. Eventually, the captain suggested waiting for the search to progress before discussing punishment further. Yujin, still angry, reluctantly agreed, but warned the captain that he needed to produce results within 2 hours, or she would call for his removal as captain. The captain was left perplexed and frustrated, slamming his desk in frustration. Unbeknownst to him, the amorph watched the entire scene unfold from the vents. The amorph, now inside the vents, contemplated its new trait, wild instinct, and wondered about its true nature. It also considered the trait fusion system, a mechanism that allowed related traits to merge into more powerful ones. This system had surprised the amorph during the recent incident, and it was eager to investigate its capabilities further. Observing Yujin's growing frustration and anger, the amorph realized that everything was proceeding as planned. It recognized that she was the type of person who showed humanity only towards things she cherished. Losing something dear to her, like her cat, had caused her to lose her composure. The amorph had successfully created a rift between Yujin and the soldiers, using the cat as a buffer. The disappearance of that buffer had exposed the soldiers to hardships they despised, leading to further resentment. Furthermore, Yujin no longer trusted the soldiers, as she believed their negligence was the reason her cat had gone missing. The amorph saw this as an opportunity to obtain her genetic fragments. Yujin's anger and frustration drove her to take out her anger on the test subjects. She began to harm them one by one, and when she noticed the amoeba, she pressed a yellow button, causing the amoeba to plead for help. Watching Yujin's cruel actions from the vents, the amorph seethed with anger. However, it understood that words of comfort were unnecessary. It had a different plan in mind: revenge. The scene shifted to Yujin speaking with the captain, demanding results after 2 hours of waiting. The captain explained that the search had just begun, but Yujin's impatience got the better of her. She warned the captain, suggesting that he was defying the will of the noble capital. The captain, however, maintained his authority and reminded Yujin that he could detain her if necessary. The amorph, still hidden in the vents, observed this confrontation and noted that there had been pre-existing conflicts between the two. Yujin eventually backed off and left the captain's office, with 2 guards following her. She decided to go to the restroom, and one guard mentioned that he needed to use the restroom as well. This presented an opportunity for the amorph, as it recognized that Yujin was now alone in the women's restroom, without any security equipment to hinder its movements. The amorph wasted no time and swiftly crawled through the vents, heading towards the bathroom, determined not to miss this golden opportunity for an ambush. As the amorph emerged from the vents and crawled through the ceiling, Kisaragi Yujin was in the restroom, washing her face. The amorph prepared its paralyzing poison, poised for the perfect moment to strike. Carefully, it watched Yujin's every move. When she finished washing her face and sighed, she suddenly heard a sound behind her. Without hesitation, the amorph leaped down with its tail pointed at her head. Yujin reacted quickly, bending down to evade the attack. The amorph struck the wall instead, but it didn't give up. It leaped again, this time successfully injecting its paralyzing poison into Yujin. Paralyzed and unable to move, Yujin fell to her feet. The amorph, with its tail pointed at her, gazed at her with anticipation. It wondered what she was feeling at that moment. Was it fear of the alien creature that had attacked her, anger at her helpless situation, or the looming fear of death? Regardless of her emotions, the amorph was determined that Kisaragi Yujin would die. It began to devour her, starting from her head, relishing the taste of its prey. As it consumed her, the amorph felt something change within itself. Her genetic information, flowing into its body through her blood, triggered an evolution. A system window appeared, offering the amorph the chance to evolve. The amorph was ecstatic. It had been waiting for this moment. However, just as it was about to press the yes button, a vision flashed before its eyes. It saw a guard arriving and firing a gun, killing it instantly. The amorph was puzzled by this vision and wondered if it was related to its new predator instincts. Realizing there was no time to contemplate, the amorph decided to hide. It crawled behind the guard and used its tail to pierce the guard's helmet and head, killing him instantly. With the threat eliminated, the amorph knew it had to return to its nest quickly, unsure if there were unexpected tracking methods in place. Back in its nest, the amorph used its hypersenses to scan the surroundings for any potential threats. When it determined that the area was clear, it finally answered the system window's prompt, confirming its desire to evolve. The evolution process began, and the amorph felt its body start to change. During the transformation, the amorph couldn't help but think about how peculiar the sensation was. It felt as if it were becoming an entirely different entity. It compared the experience to having memories from the fetal stage. It couldn't open its eyes to witness the transformation, as it had lost all control over its body since entering the cocoon. Inside the cocoon, the amorph waited patiently, feeling the fluids rebuild it into something alien. Then, the cocoon cracked, and a purple hand emerged, followed by its feet. The amorph had transformed into a creature resembling a xenomorph, with sturdier teeth and a haunting screech. It had evolved into a more formidable and terrifying form, ready to face the challenges that lay ahead. The scene shifted to a meeting with the captain and various team leaders as they discussed the situation. The medical team leader informed the captain that, based on visual examination, the cause of Kisaragi Yujin's death appeared to be an attack on her neck, possibly by a small saw-like instrument. The captain was taken aback by this information and contemplated their next steps. The captain asked about the possibility of conducting an autopsy, but the doctor suggested that further examination was needed to confirm the cause of death. Uncertain about what to do, the captain expressed his frustration. The security team leader reported that they had checked all the ship's surveillance cameras but found nothing unusual. He also mentioned that the primary suspect, the guard, was currently being interrogated. However, he believed that the guard was likely not the perpetrator. The captain instructed the team leader to report the results of the search as soon as they became available. He then brought up the recent incident in the lab, where a promising talent had his brain removed while alive due to disobedience. The captain emphasized the severity of the consequences that awaited those involved in Kisaragi Yujin's death, warning that they could face a similar fate. The meeting attendees appeared fearful as they discussed how to handle the situation. Various suggestions were made, including blaming the death on a lab accident or food poisoning. However, tensions rose among the team leaders as they argued about the best course of action. Amid the chaos, the risk management team leader urged everyone to calm down, emphasizing that turmoil would only complicate matters. He then brought up the fact that they were near Planet C8, which was the territory of the Space Dogs, a notorious group of space pirates and their arch-enemies. The captain was initially taken aback by this revelation, but the risk management team leader explained that the Space Dogs were known for raiding and pillaging, and even veteran battleships had suffered losses against them. He proposed that they could report being attacked by the Space Dogs to cover up Yujin's death. The captain was concerned about their limited armaments, but the risk management team leader suggested contacting his friends, who had ties to the Space Dogs and could help stage an attack. The captain agreed to this plan, albeit reluctantly. The captain reminded the risk management team leader to handle the situation properly, and the man assured him that he would. The meeting concluded with preparations underway, and the captain decided to leave the handling of Eugene corpse to the risk management team leader until the space dogs arrived. The team leaders left the meeting with their respective tasks, and the situation became increasingly complex, with the crew of the research ship now involved in a dangerous web of deception and intrigue. The Amorph, now in its larva stage, contemplated its next steps for survival and evolution. It examined its current status and traits, noting that it had successfully achieved its first evolution and was now considered a larva. The Amorph understood that there were a total of 6 stages of evolution, with the final one being ascension, which was akin to completing the Amorphous storyline. As it examined its traits, the Amorph realized that it was on track to become a physical enhancement type. Types were similar to other races' jobs, but had slight differences. When specific conditions were met, a type would unlock, granting related abilities with a synergy bonus. However, there was a mysterious 0.5 condition that the Amorph didn't recognize. It remembered that it had left a part of Kisaragi Eugene uneaten, and that might be the missing piece. The Amorph decided to find Eugene's corpse to consume her psychic powers. It left its nest and crawled through the ventilation ducts, which now felt narrower due to its increased size. The Amorphous hypersenses led it to a scent that it recognized the smell of a corpse. It followed the scent and soon realized that it was above the morgue, where the deceased were laid to rest. The man stationed near the morgue detected an unusual odor, prompting him to investigate its source. As he approached the source of the smell, he stumbled upon a hole that appeared to have been corroded by acid. Unbeknownst to him, the Amorph was lurking nearby. Puzzled by the strange odor, he contemplated calling the guards before departing the area. However, just as he was about to leave, the Amorph ambushed him, striking him on the head with its tail. The Amorph swiftly infiltrated the location where Eugene's lifeless body lay covered. With a sense of curiosity, it removed the blanket covering her. The Amorph pondered its strange circumstances, reflecting on its ability to mercilessly end lives without experiencing guilt. It wondered whether its transformation into an Amorph had corrupted its nature, or if its ruthless, murderous tendencies had always been a part of its true self. Yet, introspection yielded no answers, so it decided to address its hunger first. Using both arms, the Amorph firmly grasped Eugene's lifeless face, opening its maw to begin feasting on her body. It contemplated the harsh reality of its existence, that in order to survive, it must continue to take lives. This, it concluded, was the essence of being an Amorph, a relentless need to adapt. It also considered that in the grand scheme of nature, bodies decompose and return to nourish the earth. Therefore, perhaps it was only natural for it to derive sustenance from them. As it devoured the deceased body, the Amorph discovered a foreign device in Eugene's mouth, which seemed to originate from her heart. Unfamiliar with its purpose, it pondered whether it might be related to a heart condition she had. Suddenly, a system window appeared before the Amorph, revealing a surprising revelation. It appeared that Kisaragi Eugene possessed the coveted psychic powers trait, confirming the Amorph's earlier suspicions. The predation effect was triggered, and it acquired a gene fragment labeled as the psychic organ. Although the Amorph was initially disappointed because Amorphs could use psychic powers without such an organ, it decided to remain optimistic and clicked the yes button. I need to fill trait slots to unlock types anyway, the Amorph thought as its body evolved. So, this is an Amorph 1, huh? Now, interesting. It may fuse with another trait by chance and become useful. Despite the initial disappointment, the Amorph continued its quest for adaptation. Finished with Kisaragi, next, I'll try eating a guard. Guards have some subtle flavor, maybe because of the high muscle content. It's like chewing intestines. Suddenly, the Amorph sensed a shift change among the guards. Pondering the situation, it mused, do they not have many reinforced suits on this ship? The one coming is wearing the suit from the previous guy. Observing the approaching medic, it remarked, this medic will change shifts too, right? The moment the replacement enters, he'll notice the changes in this room. Since this is the space era, obviously, he'll think there's a monster in the same space as them. I'm not strong enough yet for an all-out battle with the crew. I need something to buy time until I get stronger. Smoke screen. Come to think of it, this was the morgue. The preservatives and chemicals to handle corpses. A fun idea suddenly came to me. A beneficial way to get through the crisis and harass the crew. The Amorph contemplated the structure of Megacorp, emphasizing that while it lacked an official capital, Earth served as the de facto headquarters. It elaborated on the dominance of the 5 companies that established Megacorp, with the Eugene House originating from what was once known as East Asia, particularly South Korea. Over time, this small enterprise had grown into a vast empire that claimed every inch of South Korea as Eugene territory, with advanced transportation systems, artificial ecosystems, and countless tools under their control. On Earth, a man was engrossed in gardening, using a handheld shovel. This unassuming gardener was none other than the CEO of Eugene's. As 2 well-dressed men in suits approached him, he paused his work and inquired about their purpose. The man with shades solemnly reported, "It's about the young lady, Lady Kisaragi." The farmer CEO smiled warmly and asked, "The 3rd daughter, huh?" "Yes, what happened with Kisaragi?" The man continued, "The young lady's transmitter was destroyed." The farmer's expression changed, and he replied, "That can't be. I didn't burden Kisaragi with unpleasant tasks." The man in shades pressed on, "The last signal came from near C8. Checking shows it's space dog territory." Without warning, the farmer CEO put his hand on the man's shoulder and, still wearing a poker face, used his handheld shovel to strike the man with shades, instantly incapacitating him. He relentlessly continued his attack until the man lay lifeless on the ground. 3 other men swiftly covered the deceased body with a blanket, and the farmer CEO ordered them to dispose of it. With a cold demeanor, he turned away and stated, "I've no need for tools that answer unasked questions. You know the most important thing to us is that tools are tools, right?" One of the men affirmed, "Yes, we'll be careful." The farmer CEO's thoughts turned to the gravity of the situation. The cost of raising Kisaragi was 10 billion credits, which is equivalent to a new prototype battleship. And I even had genetic enhancements done on her. How could mere pirates possibly lay hands on that child? I wonder who would dare harm the jewel of the Eugene House. He then turned to the man and asked, "The ship Kisaragi was on, the captain was Samuel Yu, right?" The man confirmed, "Yes." The farmer CEO continued, "The Samuel House is near Titan. Those Egerton bastards have an interest there. But it's not their doing. Egerton's leader is a coward. He doesn't have the guts to bear fangs at the Eugene House." He shifted his attention back to the man and inquired, "Child, what do you think?" The man replied, "I suspect T&CS involvement." The farmer CEO chuckled, saying, "Ha, great minds think alike. TEC and Egerton appear to feud over ruling Jupiter but are actually in cahoots. Since Egerton's credits come from TEC, that snake is probably thinking of gaining control before the board meeting, right? You know too, don't you?" The man nodded and said, "Yes. Tech's family head, Chamberlain, wants the CEO position, your seat, my lord." "That's right. That cocky brat clearly has me in his sights." The farmer CEO became serious and issued a command, "We have justification, so let's strike first. Inform everyone in the house. We have Shadow embedded near C8. Contact him to handle that." The man acknowledged with a grave tone, "Understood. There will be bloodshed." The CEO of Eugene's gave a final order, his resolve unwavering, "Samuel Yu and everyone who was even slightly involved with that ship, bring them all before me without exception. Those who damage my assets deserve death." At the morgue, the captain arrived to witness the unusual scene, where the dead bodies had turned to ash and smoke enveloped the area. Perplexed, he questioned one of the guards about the situation. "Smoke came from the inside, you say? When you went in to check, there was a fire." The guard replied, "Yes, sir. I wanted to immediately check what had happened, but only doctors were allowed in." The medical team leader, after examining the remains, expressed his confusion. "I don't understand how there could have been a fire when it's just corpses inside. Judging by the ring. Could it have been a team member working overtime? Are these all the corpses here?" The man then requested the captain to gather the team leaders urgently, sensing that something terrible had occurred. The scene shifted to the meeting, where one leader exclaimed, "What did you say? The guard and research team leaders' corpses are gone? The corpses didn't just get up and leave, right? How is that possible? Medical team leader. Are you sure you saw it right?" The medical team leader affirmed, "I checked over and over, only 2 corpses are missing, for sure. And that's not all. Considering the morgue's chemicals, a fire could occur, but to that extent, it is very rare." The risk management leader chimed in, suggesting, in other words, it was an intentional arson, right? Just who would do such a thing? The security team leader raised the possibility of an unidentified alien organism being on board, but this idea was met with skepticism from others. "Forget that," another man interjected, "the biggest issue is the missing research team leader's corpse." The captain, visibly upset, declared, "We're supposed to meet with the pirates at C8. First, we need to identify the culprit. This isn't just my problem. If you're worried about Noble Capital's retaliation, cooperate as much as you can." The captain then turned to the risk management team leader, inquiring, "Did you contact them?" The risk management leader replied, "Yes, right after the meeting ended." The captain instructed, "Don't mention anything about this and say that we will deliver the corpse as scheduled." The risk management leader questioned the decision, "Are you sure? Even if we find it, it's a problem if there's no way to handle it. We just need to find the corpse before the meetup." The captain placed a hand on the shoulder of the security team leader and said, "Security team leader, you know what you need to do, right? The culprit must be caught, no matter what." The security team leader responded, "I'm already doing my best." The captain insisted, "Your best isn't enough. Search all crew members if needed, just find the culprit. I'll grant full authority regarding this." The security team leader acknowledged, "Yes, sir. I will definitely find them." In the vents, the Amorph was listening to the unfolding situation, feeling satisfied with the chaos it had sown. Things went seamlessly. A way to conceal my identity and confuse my enemies. It was a fire. Who would think that mixing chemicals in the morgue to start a fire was an alien's doing? After making a toxic substance by mixing the chemicals, I finished it off with some drops of acidic blood. Thanks to that, the corpses were well disposed of, and it went seamlessly, but I didn't expect the alien talk to come up. And of all things, they're going to contact those space trash. The captain must have lost his mind. Seems that the risk management team leader took the lead, got to check on him later. He may be colluding with the pirates. Pirates are diverse races, so I can obtain various genes, but the fragments I can get from the research ship will decrease due to the attack. I'll have to see the pirates' level to judge this properly. Huh? That person. He was clearly the supply management team leader who strongly denied my existence, right? He shouldn't have any relation to this situation, so why is he like that? The supply management team leader, growing wary, looked left and right before suddenly entering the cargo hold. The Amorph, using hypersenses, thought, he's the supply management team leader, he can just openly go in. That kind of wary behavior is too unnatural. What sweet secret did he stash that caused that reaction? Wait, what's that container? The team leader's trace stopped there. ID card and fingerprint authentication. The security is higher than that of the other containers. The walls are so thick that even my hypersenses can't see inside. He must be hiding something important. Thanks to him, my curiosity is piqued. Originally, I planned to target the medical team leader, but I changed my mind. My next target is him. The scene shifted to the supply management team leader drinking alcohol. One man urged, "Team leader, please stop drinking now." The leader insisted, "Just one more, one more." The man questioned, "Why are you so clingy today?" The leader revealed his inner turmoil, "I don't feel like I'm living these days." In his mind, he regretted his decision. Why did I trust the words of the black market cult dealer? I was tempted by the words that he got it from an ancient ruin, and I took it quickly because it seemed like it would sell well. It was good until I secretly loaded the eggs on the day of the deal. And then one of the eggs hatched the day after I loaded it. If only I had closed the container door properly that day. I can't complain to anyone. If the captain finds out, he'll lose his mind and kill me. After his drinking session, the supply management team leader stumbled through the hall, inebriated and unsteady. He suddenly felt something following him, causing him to turn and look behind, but no one was there. As he turned his attention back to walking, he sensed something crawling behind him, which sent him into a panicked run. He desperately tried to open a door using the access code, and after struggling, it finally opened. However, in his intoxicated state, he slipped and fell. As he searched for his phone to call for help, he heard banging sounds from the hallway. Terrified, he realized something was crawling toward him. He frantically tried to stand, but the alien creature crawled into the room, screeching in front of his face, its mouth wide open, ready to consume its helpless prey. The Amorph continued its covert activities, ransacking the room of the supply management team leader. It couldn't help but pass judgment on the team leader's habits. His daily patterns were simple, so it was easy, the Amorph thought. Wasting so much time drinking at the bar, he's a total wage thief. The captain should thank me since I'm reducing personnel wasting salaries. But damn, clean up once in a while. It's so dirty, I could die. As the Amorph searched for the needed ID card, it glanced at a poster of a model on the wall but found itself unresponsive to such stimuli. It picked up a notebook, and the ID card fell out, finally obtaining the key it sought. I've obtained everything available, the Amorph thought. Gotta clean up first before going. This supply manager is just so-so. The alcohol smell on his body is too strong. Lessens the appetite. Leaving the room, the Amorph proceeded to the container with thick walls, where its hypersenses couldn't penetrate. It used the acquired ID and the severed hand of the supply management team leader to gain entry. Inside, it discovered an unexpected sight. Rows of tubes were filled with various types of aliens, essentially a freezer filled with specimens. The Amorph quickly deduced that the supply management team leader was involved in smuggling. Its surprise deepened when it spotted Amorph eggs, including an empty one that once contained its own origin. That team leader was trying to smuggle me, the Amorph thought. Well, in the game, the Amorph's starting location wasn't a spaceship but an unidentified ruin. I don't know what happened during the transit, but it looks like, after hatching, the original escaped the container and died shortly after from malnutrition. And then my consciousness took over. That explains why I found roaches so delicious. It was my body's instinct to survive. I somehow feel conflicted. The Amorph paid its respects with a moment of silence and then left the room, ready to embrace its Amorph nature. Let's stop the courtesy here, it's time for some Amorph-like behavior, it resolved. Collecting 3 Amorph eggs, the creature began to feast on them, noting the absence of a predation message. Unfortunately, no predation message pops up. Well, it doesn't matter. There's still plenty to eat, the Amorph thought. Opening its status window, it saw that it needed only 2 more traits to complete its physical enhancement type. Honestly, I was a bit disappointed after eating Kisaragi. Instead of psychic powers, I got the useless psychic organ, the Amorph reflected. But to think the supply manager would give me such a precious gift. In-game, these are powerful traits you'd only get mid or late game. The most effective traits for killing the crew. With these abilities, I can move more aggressively. Not much time left until the space dogs meet up. I need to get as strong as possible since I don't know how dangerous they are. Wait for me, genetic fragments. No one in the universe will hear the screams in space. The pitiful cries of this research ship and crew will be buried completely in that dark abyss. The scene shifts to the Megacorp research ship's landing bay, where Fincher called out to Scott, suggesting it was dinner time and time to eat. Scott, engrossed in his work, replied that he needed to finish something up first, indicating that there was enough work to warrant overtime. In the cafeteria, Scott and Fincher continued their conversation. Scott expressed his confusion about the maintenance orders they were receiving, particularly those related to overhauling the fighters. I still don't get it, Scott pondered aloud, these maintenance orders. Why are they having us overhaul the fighters? Fincher, seemingly exasperated, replied, do you have to talk about work while eating? But Scott pressed on, sharing his suspicions. What, isn't it true? Think about it, Fincher. I heard that they're preparing to battle metallic gremlins." Fincher seemed shocked by this revelation. Scott continued, "Let me finish. The truth is, the metallic gremlins are already on the ship." Fincher reacted with disbelief. Scott elaborated, "You know the weird smell in the air lately? That's the metallic gremlin smell. Plus, a friend on the cooking team told me. People have been disappearing 1 or 2 at a time since last week." Fincher questioned the credibility of Scott's claims, to which another crew member chimed in, confirming that they had heard similar rumors. "I heard something too," the crew member added. "The team leader is missing from supply management." So the cargo hold manager got promoted to acting team leader. Fincher, now more willing to entertain the idea, asked, "Really?" Scott pointed out, See, Fincher. Am I right?" Fincher, still trying to process the information, questioned why the higher-ups were keeping quiet about these disappearances. Another crew member explained, "They're hiding it so the crew doesn't panic." Scott, not satisfied with this explanation, maintained his theory. "It's all because of the metallic gremlins." Fincher, perhaps not fully convinced, finished his meal and left the cafeteria, muttering his frustrations about the situation. The scene returned to the fighter plane where Scott was working on repairs, and Fincher mentioned that he was going to grab some late-night snacks. He asked Scott if he wanted anything, to which Scott replied, "I'm good. Just get me a synth drink if there is any." Scott continued his work, wondering when he would finish, when suddenly he heard Cameron's voice calling him. Scott responded that he was working and the voice assured him it would be quick. Scott slid to get up but couldn't see anyone. Perplexed, Scott said, "You call me out, then disappear?" He followed the voice to the repair bay, but inside, it was completely dark. The voice urged him to come over and help, so Scott began to open his flashlight, sensing something was amiss. As he did, he caught a strange smell in the air, something metallic but different. Scott cautiously asked, "Where the hell are you?" The voice replied, over here." Suddenly, while navigating the darkness, Scott stepped on a large screw, slipped, and fell, dropping his flashlight. Panic set in as he remembered the rumors he had heard earlier about people disappearing on the ship, possibly due to metallic gremlins. "I heard the team leader is missing in supply management." So the cargo hold manager got promoted to acting team leader. People have been disappearing 1 or 2 at a time since last week. It's all because of the metallic gremlins. Those words echoed in Scott's mind as fear overtook him. He called out for Cameron, but before he could react further, the Amorph, now behind him, mimicked Cameron's voice again. Suddenly, the Amorph grabbed Scott's face, and he let out a horrified shout as the Amorph consumed him. The Amorph, now having tasted the crew members, thought to itself, "Mimicry is pretty useful." Fincher returned from getting the synth juice for Scott and noticed that Scott's tools and equipment were still at the working station. He wondered why Scott had left when he never did during work. Just then, he heard Scott's voice coming from the repair bay and headed there to find out what was going on. "Why'd you go to the repair bay again?" Fincher asked as he approached. The voice replied, "Got something to find." Fincher was puzzled and questioned further, "And the lights are off too, what are you doing?" The voice responded, "Got something to move, help me." Fincher followed the voice and saw Scott's flashlight on the floor. He picked it up but was met with a horrific sight as blood began pouring down like rain. The Amorph, using Scott's voice, said, "Over here." Fincher realized the gruesome truth as he saw Scott's severed head, held by the Amorph, which screeched before consuming him. The Amorph thought to itself, "Do I have a talent for mimicry? Mimicry is so convenient." Among the creatures the supply manager had tried to smuggle was a larva of the red worm, a giant desert worm. The Amorph had consumed it and obtained its gene fragment, though it was a degraded version compared to the original. Nevertheless, the Amorph found its mimicry ability very useful and planned to mimic Cameron, someone from the cooking team, the following evening. As the Amorph contemplated its next moves, he remembered the amoeba. He decided to call it number 26. It heard a voice saying hello. It realized that it could communicate with creatures through brain waves using its psychic organ and decided to greet the voice with a hello as well. The voice belonged to number 26, and it asked if the Amorph was hungry today. The Amorph noticed that number 26's vocabulary had increased compared to before, and wondered if selonium had some unexplained effect on it. The Amorph replied, "Sorry, hard to give food today." Number 26 inquired why it was hard, and the Amorph simply responded with, "Can't give it." The Amorph explained to itself that it understood number 26's disappointment, but that the passage it used to provide food had become dangerous since the research team leader went missing. The security team leader had increased security in the lab, making the previously safe ducts above the lab risky. As a result, it hadn't been able to provide food for days and could only engage in conversations like this. As number 26 bid farewell to the Amorph couldn't help but feel a sense of responsibility for its well-being. It contemplated evolving to the pupa stage to help number 26, but the conditions for pupa evolution were stringent. It required the elimination and consumption of 10 individuals from each of 2 different playable intelligent races. Since there were only humans on the ship, pupa evolution seemed impossible. The Amorph considered the possibility of encountering pirates, but knew very little about them. Using its hypersenses, the Amorph observed the risk management team leader, who was wearing earphones and engaged in a conversation. The team leader reported to the person on the other end that Lady Kisaragi had been eliminated and assured that the ship would arrive at C8 as scheduled. He mentioned that all of Captain Samuel's orders had been recorded. The Amorph, watching and listening carefully, thought to itself that it had initially thought the team leader was like a bear, but now it seemed he was more like a fox. It suspected that he had instigated the captain, but the phone call hinted at plans beyond that. The Amorph decided to wait and see whether these plans would benefit or harm its own objectives. The scene shifted to a meeting where the captain expressed his anger and frustration. He questioned the security team leader about how he was handling the situation, and repeatedly asked how many crew members were missing from the ship. The security team leader explained that despite his efforts, he couldn't catch the culprits responsible for the disappearances. While the meeting continued its discussion, the Amorph watched from the vents and thought to itself that unfortunately, the culprit was right there in the vents. The captain, appearing frustrated, said he believed what the security team leader had stated. However, the risk management team leader defended the security team leader, stating that he had checked thoroughly, and the captain's accusations were unwarranted. The captain, somewhat taken aback, questioned why the culprit hadn't been caught yet and accused the risk management team leader of defending the security team leader. The risk management team leader argued that based on human standards, a human couldn't hide this extensively, and there might be some unknown entity attacking them. Another leader disagreed, stating that the ship's AI, which was once used on battleships, should have already detected any creatures on board. The risk management team leader pointed out that the freezers in the supply management team leader's container were all empty, raising concerns about the whereabouts of these creatures. The captain questioned why they hadn't seen any traces of these creatures if they were indeed responsible for the disappearances. The risk management team leader suggested that the ventilation ducts, which spanned the entire ship, could be a hiding place for the creatures. He noted that even a small creature could be dangerous, citing the example of metallic gremlins, which were only 80 cm in size but could destroy battleships. The Amorph realized that Arnold, the risk management team leader, was now a significant threat, and he regretted not dealing with him earlier. The leaders discussed the potential problems these creatures could cause, including the possibility that one of them had consumed the research team leader's corpse. They also considered the issue of dealing with the pirates. The risk management team leader proposed deploying 6 out of the 8 squads to search the ducts for the creature, and the captain granted permission for this operation. The Amorph left the meeting, knowing that it had avoided detection for a while but that this confrontation was inevitable. With the ducts effectively sealed and cameras in the halls, the Amorph felt cornered and had to make an important decision: should it run or fight? Recalling the words of the risk management team leader during the meeting, the Amorph became angry and determined to fight. It screeched, ready to confront its pursuers and protect its existence as the Amorph. Did you enjoy this video? If so, please like and subscribe for more content like this. We will continue the next part if the updates are released. Thank you for watching. Peace out.